right. We are coming back live from day 2 of Advancing Prefab 2023 here in Phoenix, and joined by Jared of ELECTRI now. Welcome to Bridging the Gap.
Excellent. Well, thank you for having me. How are you doing?
Doing pretty good.
Good.
This shows, this has been fun, meeting a whole bunch of people and getting to have a lot of conversations.
Absolutely. And as of last year, this has been a big jump in booths and people. It's glad to see this growing and growing every year. So it's a great conference to be at. So.
Yeah, it was awesome on the opening day. Amy asked how many first timers there were in the crowd, and it was like a third of the audience came out. That was awesome.
That's good. It's you love seeing it, especially when it's multi-trade. Because that's really working together truly as a team. And, this multi-trade aspect that, MEP innovations, the different collaboration between the trades, it's a great opportunity to, just to meet new people and collaborate.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Jared, for those who may not be as familiar with you, can you give us a little bit about your background and what brought you to Advancing Prefab this year?
Sure. So, first of all, I've spent my entire career in the electrical industry without really thinking about it, right? So I, get out of trade school and start working in CAD, and was working in a mapping company in GIS, and went from there to engineering and surveying out. I would survey utility lines, so I'd spend all day with a chainsaw cutting right away. Right, but then I'd sit in my truck and figure out the parabola curves of hot and cold, of the conductor and all that, right? So always connecting the construction and the technology together. So really, being with ELECTRI is really the same thing. So I went through the BIM and the VDC technology, prefab, multi-trade prefab. Started working with ELECTRI to where I can kind of teach and help the electrical contractor with these construction technology workflow issues, really help them kind of get over that hump. You hear this phrase, the paralysis by analysis, right? There's so much inundation of software, hardware, new tech, that they want to just step back and say, you know what, there's so much I don't want to do anything, right? They just freeze. So I'm there to kind of help them, hey, let's take a look at this, how can we implement it? And then, working with ELECTRI, ELECTRI is a full nonprofit, right? We're born from NECA as an R&D arm. I'm a free consultant to electrical contractors. I can go and help them out, and being a nonprofit, there's nothing to lose. We're here to help the industry, and I go to a electrical contractor, I teach, I learn. I go to another electrical contractor, I teach, I learn, and one by one, we're elevating that industry up. And it's just it's a great place to be, and it's a great time to be here, with the amount of technology that is here and the opportunities for electrical contractors, especially small ones. They now have the ability to have the same options for software and hardware that the big contractors have. It's available to everybody, to where it used to be just big, available to the larger contractors.
Right.
So
it's
really exciting. Yeah.
Yeah. So what brought you to ELECTRI? They're doing awesome work with the research. Obviously, we love Josh as well. He's a good friend of the show.
Absolutely.
But what brought you over to ELECTRI?
Well, the fact that I was able to, instead of helping a single contractor, I could help multiple contractors. And really, I didn't realize I was so passionate about this until I really started working with NECA a couple years ago. And the ability to elevate an industry, to actually sit there and say, you know what, I walk into a shop and we work together, and I become a dialogue for them, a resource for them. And then, I leave, I talk to them 6 months later, and they're like, oh yeah, we've implemented these things. We're better than we were. Yeah. And one by one, just, helping the industry out. And I'm going to be honest here, as electricians, we're always trailing behind mechanical guys, right? So I'm a little selfish in the fact that we're going to catch them sooner or later. We're going to catch up to them, and we're going to be right there. They're going to be like, oh yeah, technology, mechanical, electrical. Right now, it's like you speak technology, it's like mechanical, maybe electrical. So we're catching up though. What
do you think the biggest jump is that needs to happen for electrical to really fully catch up?
Well, technology-wise, I think that we're starting to see some of the AI options that are coming out, and that's going to be multi-trade, right? These AI companies, these AI software companies are working with mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, and I think that's going to be kind of level the playing field. But really, when it comes to just processes. What's going to help electricians is standardizing their processes, which mechanical has done forever, along with the amount of prefab that mechanical does, the industrialization aspect that mechanical has taken into place. I think that's really where electricians need to focus on, okay, how can we prefab? What can we prefab? How can we really optimize the prefab? And, mechanical's been doing it longer. They're more experienced, and, we're still learning.
Mm-hmm. So bringing it back into advancing prefab and what's going on at the show, how do you encourage people to, you come into this kind of conference and it's exciting. There's lots of learnings and takeaways, but how do you encourage them to actually put something into practice when they get back and not have this just be a really good 1 week event and then it's out of their mind?
Yeah, I would say that when you're taking your notes and you're sitting here and you're learning, and there's some great sessions, right? Some great tracks. Mm-hmm. Be realistic, right? Say, you know what? I'm gonna take away 3 things, mm-hmm. And you're gonna have pages of notes. I know I do, right? Mm-hmm. And it's like, okay, let's really pull 3 things out of all your pages, the top 3 things that you want to implement, and then set goals mm-hmm. on implementing those. Mm-hmm. Start small, right? The little things, just what was a low-hanging fruit that mm-hmm. we can implement, and start small, and then you've got your notes. Your notes will be there forever. If you accomplish those 3, hey, let's pick 3 more, mm-hmm. But start small, because if you'll get overwhelmed if you say, hey, look, I've got this list of items that I want to improve on. Mm-hmm. You're going to get overwhelmed. You're going to go different directions. Find 3, focus on them, adjust them, adapt, and then just implement those.
Yeah. No, I think that's really good advice, because it happens all the time. You take all your notes, you put them all. I'll get to that when I have time to really decipher and go through all of them and really, give it the attention that it deserves, and then you never go back to it.
Yeah. You look at them 6 months later, you're like, man, I'm intimidated by these notes.
Right. Or you don't remember, of like, what did I mean by that comment?
Yeah. And really, that's really the just pick a couple and focus on those, and at least you'll get something out of it. If you don't, you just look at 6 pages of notes 6 months later, mm-hmm. you're not going to implement anything, and then you're like, well, it's a great event, but really didn't take anything away from it.
Yeah, one of the things that has come up in the conversations so far during the show, which I think is really interesting, is when you're telling a case study or you're talking about a new workflow that you're implementing, to be real with it, that not everything was sunshine and rainbows throughout the process, and even on a highly successful project that was awesome, it saved a bunch of money, it saved you time, yada yada yada, checked all the boxes, something still went wrong along the way, and to be open in a place like this to kind of share your warts.
Sure.
How does that play out into the real world, and maybe what does construction need to learn from that?
So, really one of the things that I'm a firm believer in is that you're not really succeeding in your job, in your process, if you're not failing, right? Because some of the best lessons happen with some of your failures, right? And getting people to understand, don't be afraid of failing. Because that's the thing, right? If someone fails, they want to hide it. Oh man, I messed up, or oh man, this is a failure. Let's put it under the rug and say that this was a success from A to Z, right? But that's when it's really a failure. If you take that and you teach based on that failure, you learn from that failure. Shoot, now it's a lesson, right? It's not a failure, and don't be afraid of it. Like you said, everyone's going to have them. Some are huge, some are small. But it's a learning process, each and every one. So that was really one of the things, is just don't be afraid of your failures. It's going to happen. Celebrate them as much as your successes. And then another really important part of this is getting a log together for improvement that has the voice of the entire company, right? Because a lot of this prefab is based on innovation, right? Thinking outside of the box. How can we? And that's the whole point of this conference, advancing that. Get those ideas from the guys in the field, right? Implement a improvement log that the guys in the field have access to, and what that does is now they're able to put ideas into a place that could possibly come to fruition and go into implementation, and then they are now saying, hey, look, that was my process. I helped that process come along, and now they're putting their DNA into the project and into the company. So those are some really cool, just a couple of things that are, I think, really important when talking about failures and successes in advancing prefab.
Yeah, on that log idea, the other night at dinner you were talking about telling a story on implementing that, I think with Bluebeam and leveraging Bluebeam to the field to get that input. Can you share some of what that really looked like and what the response was that you got from that?
Sure. So, the ideas of getting that, and like you said, Bluebeam as an example, right? But it can be any cloud-based platform, right? That you stick an Excel spreadsheet on there and you send it out to the field. The response was overwhelming, right? Because it gave them an avenue, right? Because there's a lot of guys that were doing things to make their job easier, but they felt like they were hiding it, keeping it close to their vest. It gave them an avenue to talk about this. And man, the first couple of weeks that we started really implementing it, and then I saw it implemented, you were getting huge responses, right? Big responses. And there were some that were really good, that really affected the prefab process. And it got to like we were talking with having a release week or release day, it's a specific day of the week. They would get excited to see what's being implemented. What are some of the new things that are coming out, and if we ever missed it, they would send emails. Hey guys, where's that? We want to see what's new. What were some of the ideas that were accepted, and it was really kind of it was a great resource and incentive for these guys to volunteer information. The worst idea is one that's not shared. Right, and these guys were excited once they realized that people were listening. Man, you would get some that were like, "Well, okay, we can't really do that," but a lot of them were really good ideas, and that changed the workflow for the office, and changed the mentality of the guys in the office. So.
Yeah, two things that stand out to me, why that was successful was very few companies, sadly, actually go to their employees and ask, "Hey, what's your thought? We want your input." And so that makes a big difference and stands the company out that they're willing to hear other people. And then you got to take action, which is the second thing. You can't just ask for the input and be like, "No, those are all trash. I'm not doing any of that." You have to implement, or at least give reason of why you're not implementing it, to give it acknowledgement to the ideas that came up.
And you get to do it as far as, some of those guys, hey, come on into the office, let's have lunch, let's talk about your idea.
Yeah.
And the more engaged you get, and retainage is one of those things that is a big word that we use a lot now, right? Just simply because of the turnover rate that we have. It helps with the fact that their DNA is in the process now. Hey, I did that. They go to the next job and they're talking about, they don't know this guy from anyone, what he did, and he could sit there and say, "Hey, that process you just said, I helped out with it." And it's just having that pride. Electricians are proud in their work and proud of what they do. Having pride in a process improvement is just as important.
Yeah. So, kind of bringing it back into the prefab world, what's the biggest untapped potential?
And probably just standardization. Right, I think that is. I think that there's that we're all working on it, but I think as untapped potential goes, I think as people start, or as electricians, companies start to standardize, they could start to see how much improvement they have in their process. They can narrow down. They can laser focus failures and improvements, because it's always going to be the same. You see it show up over and over and over and over. So as untapped resources, and that's a kind of a bold term, I know standardization is hard, but I think that is one of those things that, bang for your buck, start small, start standardizing, get the buy-in from the field, have them participate in the standardization. I think those are all really low-hanging fruit that make a big impact in your process. And as well as I do, process is the foundation for everything past that, right? Your technology, your implementation, all of that is, you get your process first and then move forward.
Yeah, more than agree. Coming from the technology side, I will encourage people all the time, do not just get software if you don't know what you're going to do with it. Is you can have the best software in the world that will solve your problem, but if you don't know what you're going to do with it and how you're going to implement it, it's just going to be a train wreck. It's going to be a disaster for you.
It is, and I've told people, you always hear that term secret sauce. Oh, that's our secret sauce. That's our secret sauce. And I tell people, you know what your secret sauce is? Your secret sauce is your workflow, because I can have a workflow, I can have this technology, and I can have this hardware, right? And if you don't have a workflow, I can give you the tech, I can give you the hardware, but if I don't show you a workflow, you're not going to be able to do anything with it. So really, what's the secret sauce? What you're building, or the process that you're building it with, right? I would argue that it's the process is the secret sauce that you always hear of.
Yeah.
And that's really what I try to work with ELECTRI. Hey, let's share. You don't have to share how. Let's just share what.
Yeah.
And then let them to figure out the how. It's more important. Their how is going to be different than your how. Right? Because their process, their personnel is different. Just we want to see what the end goal is. We want to see where can we be, and then let's work towards that goal as an industry.
Yeah, I agree. I think people definitely misconstrue the secret sauce. I agree that it's the how, what people are defining the secret sauce on. Like, it's really not that secret. Most people are doing exactly what you're doing. Yeah. They're just not telling about it.
Yeah.
You're keeping it close to the vest, so it's not that groundbreaking. But how you're doing it, well, that is totally going to vary company by company because of the personnel that's there and the culture and 1,000 other influences that kind of roll into it.
Absolutely, and it's funny because you go visiting electrical contractors. I didn't realize until I started getting more under my belt. You go to their end product, right? Like the end of their prefab shop, and you look at the completed project or product. It's always the same: strut, all thread, jam nuts. The equipment is all the same, but you backtrack from there. You could look at 10 electricians that are prefabbing their secret sauce. The end product is all the same. Now start going step by step backwards, and that's where you start to see the differences. The way their prefab is set up, the workflow in their shop, the way that each one of their employees is working on a certain section of that prefab component. That's your secret sauce. The end product is all the same. You could take pictures of electrical contractor 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and you're like, yeah, it's a prefab rack. There's really no secret there. But look at how it was done. Look at who did it. Look at the process that, the stations, the flow.
Sure.
That's your sauce. Right.
So what's the next step in the industrialization of the industry?
Next week I'm going to visit with some robotic companies. I think that robotics, I think we're going to start seeing a lot of that, right? And it when I'm sure you've seen it, the HP floor marking robot. Well, when HP gets involved, it's like, okay, it's real. It's real, Up until then, it's like one-offs, and then you're like, okay, here's HP, and you're like, oh, well, okay. But, I really see that in multi-trade. I think we're the workforce issues that we're having across all the trades. We're having to process improve, right? Because we can't hire enough people. We have to improve our process. And we can do that individually as each trade, but it doesn't really compound until you multi-trade.
Right.
And I think multi-trade, I think that's another thing that's really going to start pushing the industry. And you're going to start seeing it, I think, from the point of when they're awarding the job. They're going to say, hey, guys, this is a requirement that we want this much percentage. They're already saying off-site, but now I think you're going to start seeing them say multi-trade off-site. And you see it, see these mechanical companies that are buying these electrical companies for specifically that reason. And some of them are big. Yeah. You see, I know you know as well as I do some of the names that either the big electrical have bought a mechanical or the mechanical are buying the electrical, but the end goal is all the same. Right. Multi-trade MEP.
Yeah, I think it's cool seeing that kind of integration between those trades, for sure. So what does innovation mean to you then?
Innovation to me, thinking outside of the box, finding uses for things that were not meant to be used for that, right? And it's, and innovation, innovation can be anything. Like I've got some slides in a slide deck that I use for presentations, and it's a picture of a guy who's building a panel. And you sit there and you look at this, and he's got a trash can up on a toolbox, right? He's got this little tool rack hanging from the side built out of strut. He's got a bin that's got all of his wire coiled up in it and just a little hole that it comes out into one piece. And you look at it, and it's just this guy sitting in front of a big panel building this panel out. And then I start showing, okay, now you guys tell me where the innovation is. I ask the audience, you tell me. And they're looking for technology, they're looking for hardware, they're looking for these bells and whistles, and I'm like, guys, innovation is anything that makes your job easier, put in place. The toolbox, the trash can on a toolbox, hey, to me that's innovation because he doesn't have to bend over. He's not having to lean over. He's not hurting his back. The whole rack was done on boat jacks, so it could move around and it could lift up and down. Man, that is the core of innovation, right? You're using all of this stuff that wasn't meant for it for a specific person to improve your process.
Yeah.
So that's really what innovation is to me. It's like, hey, you got something that was meant for this. You know what? I'm going to modify it a little bit maybe and use it for this, and it's going to make my job easier in the long run.
Yeah, I love that. So how do people find out more information on what ELECTRI is doing and connect with you?
So ELECTRI.org is the website. It's absolutely free. You create an account, you log in. We don't send you spam mail. I promise, you're not going to get inundated with, any of that spam. But as soon as you log in, you get access to research. We've got training videos on there for, we're doing a Prefab 101 training series. Basically, like an example of how to create a QR code and implement it into your shop drawings, right? How to use Bluebeam Clouds, just some basic low-hanging fruit, but things that can help jumpstart your process. There's research, academia papers that are on there. We're constantly upgrading research, but all of this stuff is available for free, right? Just log in, create your account, and then we do, they have a Google search basically. And then you can contact me directly at jared.christman@electri.org. And I tell people, if you spend the time to send me an email, I'm going to spend the time to respond back to you. So if you send me an email, if I don't get back to you, shoot me another one. Because I will eventually, promise, I will get back to you. And again, ELECTRI is a resource. Use us.
Yeah, love it. So final question for you. If I could give you all power, all construction power, you could snap your fingers, innovate one thing in the industry, what would you pick to innovate?
One item that I would, I would love to say a form, if I could snap my finger and say, okay, right now, a form of communication between all of the trades, right, that is constantly open. It's like, if I need to talk to you, it's just like I walk to your desk and talk to you, right? Yeah. Because nowadays we're spread out all over the place, and if I'm trying to collaborate and I'm trying to coordinate and I'm trying to work together, and this is based on that MEP multi-trade philosophy, man, I got to send you an email. Hopefully you respond back to me. I got to shoot you a Teams. Maybe you respond back to me. If there was like this super AR, like, an AR process that we could all work together and see what we're building and coordinate together and, be live while we're doing it, man, that would be pretty cool. Yeah,
it's funny. I forget who I was talking to this week, but somebody brought up the old Nextel phones, kind of the walkie-talkie. I was like, you had access kind of in real time, similar to what you were saying. You could get a hold of anybody, and there was something really good about that and beneficial that we, with the tech, we kind of stepped away from.
Yeah.
Even though you got more access to people in more ways, but it's, I don't.
Take away the decline button on the phone, right? You don't have the option to decline. You don't have the option for it to go to voicemail. It's just it rings until you answer, right? And that was the thing with those Nextels. You're like, you know what? I'm just gonna keep beeping you until you. Right. It's like a walkie-talkie phone.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, that's funny though, because you're right. We step backwards. We keep moving forward, and then we look back and go, that was kind of cool.
Too bad. Yeah. Some pain points with that, but they could be fleshed out.
Yeah. Yep. No, for real.
Well, thanks so much for taking the time and joining the show.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.